Hey everyone! If you're anything like me and spent countless hours exploring the lands between with your friends, or at least trying to, you probably wished Elden Ring had smoother co-op. Well, guess what? Elden Ring Nightreign is finally here, and it's basically the answer to that wish. It keeps all the intense combat and beautiful mysterious world design we loved, but now it's built around a co-op system that actually feels, well, made for friends. Whether you're teaming up with two buddies or taking on the darkness solo, Nightreign brings a fresh twist to the Soulsborne formula. And trust me, it's so replayable. Now let's talk spells. Because magic in Nightreign? Totally different vibe. If you were used to slotting spells and grinding your intelligence in the original, forget all that. In Nightreign, spells are tied directly to the staffs and seals you find, and each one comes with two built-in sorceries or incantations. No attribute requirements, no memorization slots. You just grab the right gear and you're casting away. But here's the catch. Not all spells are created equal. Some are flashy but weak, while others will absolutely melt bosses. So today, we're diving into the best spells you can find in Nightreign, and which ones are actually worth chasing down. Let's get into it! I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching! Glintstone Arc might not look like much at first glance, but do not let its simplicity fool you. This spell is all about efficiency. It casts a wide horizontal arc of magic that can slice through enemy mobs like butter, especially in those early game skirmishes where your resources are limited. You are not going to use it to melt bosses or anything flashy, but when you are surrounded by a handful of foot soldiers, Glintstone Arc quietly gets the job done. One of the best things about Glintstone Arc is its consistency in early runs. If you are starting out with the Recluse class, you are already set. It comes standard with the Glintstone Staff, and this spell right out of the gate. But even if you are running a different class, there is a good chance you will come across it on your first night. It often shows up in the second slot of other random staves, and honestly, having it pop up early can make your first couple of fights way smoother. Now, to be clear, this is not a spell you will be carrying into the late game. Its damage does not scale well, and it starts to fall off pretty quickly once enemy health bars get beefier. But for the first stretch of your run, especially when you are just trying to conserve focus points and clear packs without wasting big spells, Glintstone Arc is a reliable, cost-effective little workhorse. Use it, abuse it, and then swap it out when you get the heavy hitters later on. Frenzied Burst is one of those incantations that just makes you feel like a total menace on the battlefield. You are literally shooting a concentrated laser of madness from your eyes. Not your hands, not a weapon. Your eyes. It is a Frenzied Flame incantation, and while it costs 24 focus points to cast, it absolutely delivers. You can channel it to increase its damage and even break enemy guard, which makes it surprisingly good for duels or boss encounters where you need to keep pressure on a single target. The range is solid, and when fully charged, it hits like a truck. Now, it is not the fastest spell to charge, so you do not want to stand there like a statue with your eyes glowing while enemies are swarming you. Timing is key. It really shines when you have some distance between you and your target. Great for sniping down enemies before they get too close. And here's a fun little tip. If you have a Frenzied Flame Sacred Seal, and you slot Frenzied Burst into the second incantation slot, the synergy is just beautiful. The damage output gets a nice bump, and it feels like the spell was meant to be used that way. As for Eyes of Madness, it pairs thematically with Frenzied Burst and fits right into the chaotic vibe of the Frenzied Flame build. It is not just about raw power, it is about style, intimidation, and going all in on that madness aesthetic. These spells are not always the easiest to find, but if you are running a Madness or Frenzied Flame character, trust me, you will want to dig them up. There is something incredibly satisfying about watching your enemies stagger and fall just from the sheer intensity of your stare. Alright, let's talk about one of the flashiest and most satisfying spells in Elden Ring, Nightreign, Rys Dark Moon. This one is not your everyday sorcery. It is slow, yes, but it hits like a magical truck once it connects. The projectile moves through the air with this eerie grace, homing in on enemies like it has a personal vendetta. And once it lands, not only does it deal a big chunk of magic damage, but it also reduces the target's magic defense. That means your follow-up spells are going to hurt even more. Now let's be honest, this is not a spell you cast in a hurry. The casting time is long, and it makes you feel like you are reading a full novel while enemies are swinging swords at you. So if you are standing in the middle of a brawl trying to charge this up, you are probably going to eat some dirt. But if you can time it right, maybe during a boss's recovery window or when your tank buddy has their attention, it is extremely rewarding. The best part? The projectile chases enemies, so you do not have to be a sniper to get value out of it. There is a bit of a trade-off though. Rys Dark Moon costs a hefty amount of focus points to cast. 62 to be exact. That is no small number, especially in longer boss fights like the Night Lords where every bit of resource management matters. Still, if you are running a magic-focused build, this spell has great synergy with other Glintstone sorceries. Sometimes it even shows up as a random secondary spell on certain higher-tier Glintstone staves, which is a fun little bonus. It is not something you will spam, but when you need to turn the tide, it is one of the coolest finishers in the game. Alright, let's talk about one of the coolest spells you can get your hands on in Elden Ring. Nightreign, Adullas Moonblade. This one's a carrion sorcery that summons a massive icy greatsword. When you swing it, it not only slashes with cold damage up close, but it also fires a frosty projectile that can hit enemies at mid-range. It is flashy, effective, and surprisingly versatile. And for just 26 focus points per cast, it is one of those spells that makes you feel powerful without draining your entire bar in a single swing. Now, in terms of raw power, it is not the absolute top-tier nuke. There are bigger, flashier spells out there. But what makes Adullas Moonblade so good is the balance. You can cast it repeatedly, the area of effect damage is solid, and the cold buildup can absolutely wreck enemies that are not ready for it. The projectile also gives you breathing room, perfect for when you want to keep distance but still keep the pressure on. It is that rare spell that feels just as good in a tight fight as it does when you are clearing a group from a distance. And here's the fun part: revivals. Let's say your buddy is down, and it is way too risky to run into the chaos to pick them up. Adullas Moonblade gives you an option. Thanks to the reach of those icy projectiles, you might just be able to clear enough enemies from afar to make a path, or at least buy enough time. It is not a guaranteed revival tool, but it gives you options where most spells would leave you helpless. Honestly, it is one of those spells you pick up for the style and keep using because of the utility. Definitely worth making room for on your Glintstone staff. Black Flame is one of those incantations that feels incredibly satisfying to use, especially when you land that full charge and watch enemies melt away. It is a Godskin incantation, which means you will need a Godslayer seal to cast it, and yes, it will hog your primary spell slot on that seal. But honestly, it is worth it. You throw a ball of searing black fire at your enemies, and the real kicker is the lingering damage. This thing keeps burning your target over time, and it scales with their maximum health, which makes it especially nasty against tanky enemies and bosses. The real fun starts when you hold down that charge. Instead of just a fireball, you get a small explosion on impact, dishing out area of effect damage to everything nearby. It is perfect for crowd control when you are surrounded or want to clear a cluster of enemies fast. Timing is everything though. Charging takes a moment, so make sure you are not doing it right in the face of an angry troll or something equally terrifying. When you get it right though, that boom is incredibly satisfying. If you are playing as the Recluse and focusing on elemental residue farming, this incantation becomes even more valuable. The burn effect not only whittles down enemies but also helps with extracting those precious elements. It is kind of a 2-for-1 deal. Solid combat spell and resource tool. Just remember, you need that specific seal, so keep an eye out for a Godslayer seal early on. Once you have it, Black Flame is definitely a spell you will want to keep slotted in. Golden Vow might not be the flashiest incantation in Elden Ring, Nightreign, but trust me, it is a game changer. A lot of players chase after the big, explosive sorceries or the super edgy Black Flame spells, and hey, I get it. Who does not love a little magical chaos, right? But here is the thing. Golden Vow gives you and your whole squad a buff to both attack and defense. That means you are not only hitting harder, but you are also taking less damage. In a game where every second counts, that kind of boost can be the difference between victory and an embarrassing death-by-dog situation. The beauty of this incantation is that it is not just for the solo hero types. If you are running co-op with a couple of friends or even with summoned allies, Casting Golden Vow near them gives them the same boost. Suddenly, your whole group becomes tankier and deadlier. It turns those long boss fights or chaotic invasion scenarios into something a lot more manageable. Just make sure they are close enough when you cast it. This is not the kind of buff you can throw across a battlefield. Another cool detail is how this spell can just show up in your secondary Sacred Seal slot. So even if it is not your main focus, it is easy to keep it around for the tougher fights. A lot of magic users forget they can carry more than one seal or staff, but if you are already juggling spells, why not throw Golden Vow in the mix? It costs a bit of focus points, 47 to be exact, but the value you get out of it is huge. Keep it in your pocket like a secret weapon. Lightning Spear is one of those classic spells that never really goes out of style, especially in Elden Ring, Nightreign. Whether you are playing as a stoic recluse or a relentless revenant, this Dragon Cult incantation is your go-to for reliable ranged damage. It hurls a bolt of lightning straight at your enemies, and the best part? You can charge it for an extra jolt if you really want to make them feel it. Think of it as your magical equivalent of a well-timed punch, just flashier and from a distance. What makes Lightning Spear such a standout is its flexibility. The low focus points cost means you are not going to be scrambling for resources mid-fight. You can fire off multiple shots without constantly chugging flasks or worrying about running dry. Need to kite a boss for a bit? Lightning Spear. Want to pick off enemies one by one without getting too close? Lightning Spear. It is a spell that just works. No drama, no weird setup, just pure reliable damage from afar. Now keep in mind, to actually cast this bad boy, you are going to need the right tool, the Gravelstone Seal. This incantation always takes the primary slot on that seal, so if you are planning to build around it, make sure you track it down early. Once you have it though, it becomes a core part of your kit. Whether you are in the middle of a chaotic skirmish or lining up a charged strike on a mini-boss, Lightning Spear is that one spell you can always count on. Comet Azour is one of those spells that instantly makes you feel like a boss. No exaggeration. This is not your average magic missile. It is a gigantic, long-range beam of raw magical power. The spell belongs to the primeval sorcery category, and while it does come with a hefty focus points cost, 40 to cast and 10 per second to keep it going, it absolutely melts enemies if you get the setup right. The catch? You have to stand still while channeling it, which makes timing and positioning super important. You cannot just fire it off in the middle of chaos and expect to walk away unharmed. Now, here is the fun part. When used under the right conditions, Comet Azour becomes absolutely broken, in the best way possible. If you have the Recluse's Magic and Holy Cocktail active, which negates focus point consumption for you and your teammates, you can beam your enemies into the Shadow Realm without worrying about running dry. There is also the Cerulean Crystal Tear, which does the same thing, but only for the caster. Either way, with these buffs active, you are essentially turning yourself into a magical turret, locking down bosses or clearing out areas without blinking. But here is the catch that makes it all a bit more spicy. You cannot just equip this spell like any other. Comet Azour only appears as the primary spell on Azur's Glintstone Staff. That means you have to actually find this specific staff during your run in Elden Ring Nightreign, which can take a bit of luck, or a lot of grinding. Once you do get your hands on it though, it is a game changer. Whether you are playing solo or with a team, this spell can carry you through some of the toughest fights, as long as you play smart and know when to fire. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.